Hi everyone, welcome back to Desert Isle Forge. My name is Tim and today's video is all about scrolls. But before we get going, I would like to draw your attention to my web store, my Patreon and my t-shirt store. If you'd like to support my channel financially, these are the opportunities. All the links gonna be in the description below. Thank you for consideration. So first I want to talk about what is a scroll and how to design one. So the scroll is a design element mainly made out of bar stocks and resembles the end of a rolled up paper, and that's where the name comes from. There are many different types and styles. I have a few samples in front of me. The scrolls first appeared in a Romanesque style, and this kind of loosely resembles that, and they were very tight. So as you can see, there are tight ones, loose ones made out of flat stock the hard way, and there's more abstract ones like this Art Nouveau style, and also an oval scroll that is more of a French eclectic style. So most of the information on the internet and in YouTube will teach you to use the golden spiral formula to design a scroll, which is kind of resemble this one, but that's a very limited approach. I have a totally different method of designing a scroll that I will demonstrate on a piece of paper, and how do I approach it, and in my opinion that's a much better well suited for different designs and different applications. So instead of using a geometrical mathematical formula like the golden spiral formula, I normally look at the space, the box that the scroll design has to fit in. It could be a space between pickets, a space between other scrolls, or a square space. So I'm going to start by drawing an 8" by 8" square. If you have your own design or a design concept, you just do what that design calls for, and adjust your box according to that. Once I'm done with the square, in this case, I try to figure out where my contact points of the outside of the scroll is going to be. This is important because this could be an attachment point, for example, like a rivet, a collar, or even a weld. And then I try to find out where do I end my scroll roughly. There's going to be a snubnose scroll that I want to put the snub nose somewhere around the middle, or a little bit off. So let me place my end of this scroll here, and then I start to define the outlines. That's important to do the outlines first, and then later we add the thickness. And just use loose and lines. Then here you kind of try to figure out where you want to come in with that, and now you could create more boxes or more lines, but I just encourage you to draw by hand, because that gives you more artistic freedom, and also develops your skills of creating loose and smooth lines, not only on paper but on the anvil as well. Maybe I'm not happy with this, so I'm gonna move this a little bit in. Depends if you want a loose scroll or a more tight scroll. Actually, I'm ending up putting this in the middle and turning it in a little bit, and there you go. So that's my outline outside of my scroll. Because this is within a square box, the spiral formula would not work. Maybe some sections could be interpreted as one, but to rely on that, in my opinion, is just not a good idea. So now we have the outline done. we're gonna add thickness to it. So in this case I do a 1/2 inch, and that's very important because that way you see how the real material will fill out the things. So I decide from this point on I'm gonna taper it down. So this is the last point when my thickness is 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna just follow and make a parallel line with the outside. And if you have multiple lines, it's fine, you can erase them later. And here I'm gonna taper it down and attach a rivet there. This could be a part of like a skirt of a railing. Have multiple of these, even mirroring each other, or you know, or the opposite direction. I can turn my paper. I always turn my paper when I'm drawing. So you know, just practice this hand drawing, because this gives you, again, if you practice this, will give you the ability to do more loose, more free designs, especially if you like Art Nouveau and want to you know, fill a large area with loose and organic designs. That's very important, because there is no formula for that. I'm going to put it in time lapse a little bit and finish this off. Alright, so this is what I come up with. And if you like to define the lines more, you spend a little more time, and you can even transfer the main lines to a tracing paper and then onto a clean paper. When I'm doing a more complex project, I always do a 100% one-on-one scale drawing of it, or if it's a symmetrical piece, I normally just draw half of it and then, you know, transfer that to the other side. Like I did a large mirror frame that was mostly scroll work. I designed 1/2 of it and transferred it over, and I just use this method. I know what my outside perimeters are, and where I have to be with certain connection points. Like there, you put a rivet here, a rivet here, a rivet here, and a rivet here, and then you are in a framework. So I encourage everybody to practice this, because this will open up your possibilities to more free and loose designs. So now that we talked about how to design the scrolls, I'm going to show you how to make them. I'm going to do 3 different designs today: a ribbon scroll, a snub-nose scroll, and a fishtail scroll. I hope the audio is not too bad because the wind is blowing. Let's start with the ribbon scroll. First, you're going to forge a long taper on the flat side, about 3 inches long. Since this is a fairly flat material, I'm using a 1/4 by 1 inch. We don't really need to have a very long taper for this one. If I would have a thicker material, I would form a much longer taper. So just finishing off this taper using a 3-pound hammer. Then I will switch to my lighter hammer and I start to do the scroll. And I might go a little bit tapered on the side, not too much. There's no really any rule to this. And on the end, I like to leave a little like radius. You can hammer it back and make it totally flat. This is just my preference. So now we are done with the taper, and we bring the piece of the piece to the edge of the anvil and start to bend down. since this is a ribbon scroll, we don't roll the end too much. If you have a solid design, you just follow that, but I'm just improvising kind of, so I go with feel here. So about that is enough, and then we just keep scrolling it in. Now the important thing when we do this is the heat. Place the heat at the right place, because if say you want to bend down the end and your heat is not at the end but rather here, instead of rolling the end in, you're gonna bend here and then just create a bulge, and then we can bring it in and strike from here and move the material up and in, and with another heat we just keep rolling it up. Now once you reach a point that the material would hit the side of the anvil, then you move over to the horn, and that way you can you know, roll the material more and make a larger scroll. You're gonna do that, reposition the camera, and I'm gonna move over to the horn. So now here we are on the horn of the anvil, and now we can bend the material right down and beyond the plane of the band, creating a larger and more rolled in scroll. Also, as you can see, I'm placing the material here and hitting like on the top. That will bend this portion out and the end in. Again, the heat must be at the right place in order to bend at the right place. So that's very important. Be honest, thin material like this can be bent cold, so you can do this cold for a certain degree. It helps if the material is annealed. Say this end is not rolled in enough, then you place it on the horn like this and hit on the outside opposite of it, and then you can move it in, because now it's impossible kind of. Maybe you can juggle with it, but that's the easiest way to roll your ends in. Also, you can use a pair of tongs, but for me, this is a easy and on-the-fly kind of method. Let me just scroll a little bit more in, and then we have some final words on this one. This was the first and the most simple scroll design, called the ribbon scroll, and this is ribbon scroll the easy way, and there's another one, ribbon scroll the hard way, or sideways. Same principle, just forge a taper and roll it up. This basic scroll is utilizing two basic forging techniques. One is drawing out, and bending. So you can see now how we build up our skills and master the basics, and then combine them to create a more complex shape. Next, I'm going to do the second most simple, that is a fishtail scroll. So we're going to start the fishtail hook by flaring out the end of a 1/4 by 1 inch flat bar with a 3-pound hammer. And now we're moving the marks with that the paint of the hammer made. Smooth it out a little bit. I have a video on how to do the spreading. I put a card up in the corner of the screen. You can click on it and check that video out. Next, I'm gonna start rolling the scroll up. So next we bring the piece to the edge of the anvil and start to hammer on the edge and roll it down. I'm gonna make this one a bit more tight since it's a different type of scroll. The ribbon scroll needs to be nice and loose, kind of. That's how the characteristics of that scroll are. But this one can be more tight at the end. And I bring it up and just start to roll it in. It's very important when you do scrolls to get the very beginning of the scroll right and have it nice. And normally you want to start a little bit more tight and gradually open up. But some of the designs are pretty even. So you don't have a very tight beginning and opening up of the curve, more like continuing more or less the same distance between the pieces. And we just continue and roll it, tighten up the end and start to roll the rest of the scroll. Again, I have to repeat myself, the placement of the heat is very important. And also when you do scroll, especially when you're using the horn, it's gonna twist, so you gotta kind of push back the fish tail back to the center, and then you can use the hardy hole or the edge of the anvil. The hardy hole is easier, so you have to make sure this is in the center. I'm gonna move on to the horn of the anvil now because it makes it easier. You can continue here, but it just makes it easier over there. And now we move to the horn, so it's easier for us to bend down and just continue. It's exactly the same method as we used for the ribbon scroll. Basically, scrolling is all the same. And you don't really need anything other than the hammer and the anvil, given that you have a proper anvil with a horn. And I will talk about some special tools that will aid you and make your life a little bit easier, but you don't have to invest in anything or make anything. I'll talk about it later. And do a final round of bending just for this demonstration purpose. I'm making this a light scroll. This is kind of close to the golden spiral design. I chose this one because it's just easier to demonstrate and less work. But you can continue, or you can close it in more. You can make many turns. And also, if you would make more of them, more than one, I would probably make a jig for it. All right. So this is our fishtail scroll. As you can see, the flared out end extrudes to the side and protrudes to the side and makes that nice design. So the last type of scroll I'm gonna demonstrate today is the snubnose scroll. I'm gonna use a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square for this one, and the first step is to mark 2.25 inches off of the end and make a mark with the hardy tool here. So I have that mark in the fire. Normally we're gonna bend this down and create a kind of a square block, and this is a kind of a formula to do 2.5 times the thickness or the circumference of the material for this bend back. That will give us enough material to make a nice round snub nose end. So I'm going to heat it up and come back to the edge of the anvil. I'm going to use the 2-pound hammer for this one. All right, so we start by heating the metal and placing the piece over the edge of the anvil, and the mark we made aligned with the edge of the anvil, and then we bend the piece down 90 degrees. And we come back and we start to pound down. and it's setting this part into a cube. Now we're back and continue forming that cube that will make the snub nose. Make sure you make this right and in the first place, because that will help us down the road. One more heat, I'm going to dress it up and come back for the next step. So here we are with this kind of a cube block at the end of our square stock. The next step is to make this into a cylindrical shape. I have a trick when I'm at this point, and I'm going to do a little bend first before I hammer down the corners, because that will create a little nice line. So when my cylindrical shape won't just start like perpendicular, but it will be a little bit rolled in already. That gives a very nice start for this Snubnose scroll. So I'm going to heat up the material and I'll show you the next step. So next we come over to the edge and just give a little bend to it until it's about 45 degrees. And then I will start hammering down the corners and also on the other side. First I do a rough corners until it becomes like an octagonal shape, and then I go and create the cylindrical piece. So this is that little area where I was talking about. If you don't bend it first, it's just going to be perpendicular, so it's going to be a little bit harder to start. This gives you a nicer start. As I'm making it to a cylindrical round shape, I also start to roll this up a little bit as I'm going through that process. That gives us, again, the nice start, because that's more important. Most important with these snub noses is to have a very nice start, otherwise it will look a little bit crude. All right, so we start to roll it up a little bit and then start to form the nice disc shape. Just go around and around. Since we had octagonal shape already, we're just smoothing it out and making it more round. If you have a hammered edge on your piece, this is the time to do it before you start to roll it up, otherwise it will be hard after. On this one I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to give another heat right at the end. Again, placing your heat is very crucial, so I'm going to heat the very end and start to roll it in. So another heat and start rolling it up, just like that. And then you can strike it with a little bit of a sweeping blow and try to fold that in nicely, creating that tight curve there. Now the trick here is, if you make multiple pieces, to really practice it a little bit and make sure that all these snub noses are more or less the same size. I'm kind of happy with this, and then start to roll it and create the scroll. So now we are satisfied with the snub nose. We're going to start rolling it down and up, putting it on over the edge of the anvil and creating the scroll. And once you reach the point that it's kind of burdensome, to do it on the edge, you go on the horn and continue that way. And now we are on the edge of the horn of the anvil and continue bending our scroll. Always have to make sure that everything is flat. It's very important, because if you put too much twist in things, it's going to be very difficult to remove them later without distorting the scroll itself. So as I go and bend, after every heat, I make sure everything is flat and parallel and twisted. All right, one more heat or two more heats, and I'll finish this off, and I'll come back to you with some other words. The Snubnose Scroll. I didn't bother to take off the edges, but if you hammer down the edges, it will give you a little bit nicer, in my opinion, more rustic look. I'm gonna do a alternative method to do a snub nose, and I'll put it on Patreon. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you will have that up at the same time as this video, and you can check it out there. Anybody who supports me on Patreon, thank you very much. So next, we're gonna talk about two tools that will be at your benefit: a bending fork and a scroll starting fork. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is this scroll starting tool, a hardy tool that is very useful when you start a scroll and want to close in the end. You can place it like this and scroll it all the way in. Also very handy to open up scrolls with it. You just have to hammer up here, and then it will bring the overturned scroll back. You can basically do a scroll without any special tools. As I just demonstrated, you just use the anvil, a hammer, and the forge. But these tools make it much easier to correct mistakes and just in general starting everything. I'm gonna splice in a little footage of me using that, starting the scroll bit. One is going to be a bending fork. Again, a bending fork is not necessary to do scrolls, but correcting curves, if you make a specific scroll to a specific design and you're off a little bit or you made a mistake, this tool will be very helpful to open. You just place it here and strike like this. You can open up curves or close curves, put it in between the forks and strike on the outside and bend more. This can be also be used when you're bending something cold, like this flat bar, and you can just use the closing method and bend that way. Again, to achieve a nice curve, you just have to do small increments. So, and also if you want to open it up, you just strike like that. I'm also going to splice in a little footage showing it used while the material is hot. So these were the three most basic scroll types: the ribbon scroll, the fishtail scroll, and the snub nose. All of these can be made by combining two of the basic forging methods. One is the drawing out and bending, the spreading and bending, and upsetting and bending. I have a playlist about these that I put a card up here. All of them can be done with a single hammer, a anvil, and a forge. Also, there's the alternative method for the snub nose that is available on Patreon for Patreon supporters. Alright guys, this was today's video. I hope you find it interesting and useful. If you like to support my channel, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. If you like to support me financially, you can visit my web store, my Patreon, and my t-shirt store. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.